Ed Rescues Christmas. It was Christmas Eve in the zoo, and everybody was wearing party hats, including Ed, the extraordinarily long-necked giraffe. Zora, his keeper, was hanging tinsel on the enclosure gate as Richie and Lucky, Ed's naughty playmates, tried to pull it down as fast as she put it up. That made Ed smile even more than usual. Christmas is meant to be a happy time, thought Ed, and he wanted everybody to have fun. The zoo was almost empty now, as the last visiting family of the day came to look at Ed and take pictures of the most famous giraffe in the world. Ed, of course, obliged with a huge grin, making sure they got wonderful photographs of his large white teeth. "Come on, kids, time to go," said the father. "If we do not hurry, we will not have time to see the lights in the West End of London. Shame about the Trafalgar Square Christmas tree, though. I went to see it every year when I was a child. I really hope to see it one more time before we all move to the USA." As the family left, Ed saw that they had put a newspaper in the bin outside his enclosure. The news about a Christmas tree at Trafalgar Square had made Ed's ears prick up. He did not remember a tree when he went on his great escape earlier in the year. As Zora left, Ed went over to the enclosure fence, leant over and retrieved the newspaper. The front page read, "Crisis at Christmas. No ladder tall enough in London to put the star back on the tree at Trafalgar Square. Prime Minister declares a state of emergency." Ed read on. It seemed like a freak storm had dislodged the star, and although a replacement had been found, no ladders were available on Christmas Eve to put it back. The tree was very important, as it had been a traditional gift to London from the people of Oslo in Norway. That was since 1947. It recognised the friendship between the two countries and the support given to Norway between 1940 and 1945. Ed understood that tradition, and respect between countries was very important to ensure peace. Christmas is, after all, the time of peace. Ed was sad and wondered how the problem would be solved. He then noticed Zora returning to his enclosure, carrying a letter in one hand and his striped socks in the other. "Come quickly," she said. "I have a letter here for you from the Prime Minister." Ed went over to her and she read the letter to Ed. It was addressed to the Special One. It was on official notepaper from 10 Downing Street and signed, "From your friend Bojo." Ed immediately realised what was being asked of him. Zora slipped on his socks, they were lovely and warm, and together they made their way out of his enclosure and down to the zoo gates. They were soon crossing Regent's Park and gradually were being followed by a large crowd of people, all wearing party hats and using their phones like torches, waving them above their heads. They walked down the middle of Portland Place, past the BBC building where reporters with large video cameras on their shoulders joined the march, and on down Regent Street where Ed had to duck under the lights across the street. They crossed over Piccadilly, down the Haymarket, where theatre-goers were queuing to get into the theatres, and then left towards Trafalgar Square itself. The crowds at the square separated to let Ed through, and at the base of the tree he was met by the London Mayor, who handed a very large star over to Ed. Ed grasped it carefully in his jaws and stretched his neck, gently placing the star right at the top of the beautiful and very high tree. As Ed stepped back to admire his work, the mayor pushed a switch, and the whole tree was awash with twinkling lights. The star was the brightest of all the lights. Zora patted Ed on his leg in appreciation, and the crowd began to cheer and sing, Jingle Ed, jingles all the way. How we love the Special One so much on Christmas Day. They sang it again and again. Ed did love Christmas. It was, after all, a time of year when people did seem to care about each other as much as Ed cared. Ed loved that feeling. He hopes you do too. Merry Christmas.